People used to use these self-same arguments before the Scottish Parliament was in existence. I remember people saying business will leave, taxes will go up, public services will deteriorate. None of that came to pass. On the contrary, public services have strengthened in Scotland. We've not seen taxes go up. Scotland is doing well, not without its challenges, with the Scottish Parliament. What we want to do is complete the powers of the Parliament and take it to its logical conclusion. And remember, living standards in the UK right now are falling. The power of independence is getting your hands on the levers of the economy to grow the economy faster and make people better off that way.
We'll talk about getting your hands on the lever of the economy a little later on when we talk about the debt and so forth. But we've got a young woman in the audience here who wants to come in.
My question really was about the affordability and the kind of difference it would make in everyday lives in terms of people's finances and things. And a lot of that is, there's a lot of changes in public services and integration of health and social care, for example, and all these huge change processes. And I just wondered what you see as the affordability and cost of those processes, aside from the actual real benefit you see in difference in
So we've got an ageing population. The idea of free personal care is going to, the need for that is going to grow exponentially. Interestingly, I know on the English side of this bridge there is no free personal care, on the Scottish side there is personal care. How Tessa Hartman, do you think people in England view the idea of this, as it were, the kind of bounty that comes to Scotland in terms of free personal care and no tuition fees and so forth?
I think they're probably very jealous, but I think it's also very interesting because I sit here as a small business owner but also as a mother of 4, and a lot of these questions are, you read about them all the time, but yet I sit here still in so much confusion because they're asking us to make asking us to sign on the dotted line to divorce essentially from England without actually thinking about what the terms of the contract are. So me as a mother, how are we actually going to, what's our tax rate going to be? I've read so many things that our taxes are going to go through the roof. My biggest customer, I work in the fashion industry, my biggest customer in the entire high street retail is in England. Our Scottish high streets are made up with businesses whose head offices are in England. The first time we talk about economic crisis, we refer to consumer spend. These are all really worrying. I am seeing for sure budgets that are being taken away because of the uncertainty, the unknown, the questions that yet can't seem to be answered. So although many people might be...
But in Scotland, businesses thrive, don't they, in a global economy? There's lots of businesses that do very well in export.
Yes, they absolutely do. But, our job is to compete against the Europeans, the French and the Italians and everybody, and we must be stronger.
How many countries in the world would want all of Scotland's terrible problems? All this natural resource, all these world-class universities, all these thrusting companies with their high technological expertise. We're really in trouble.
Yeah, but that funding comes from the UK government.
Sorry, just let me finish the point. I mean, the point about completing the powers of the Parliament is that we should have a perspective on Scottish growth. If we have a problem about revenue, we should be planning the country to grow economies, to grow prosperity, to grow skill and talent in the country.
Well, let's see the gentleman back with the specs on. Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear about Scottish growth because I'm part of the education industry, if you like, at the moment, and all I'm seeing is cut back, cut back, cut back. I'd like to know exactly how much of that £500 per person would be scaled up to look after the education system. Because we're implementing at the moment the curriculum for excellence, and there's no money behind it as far as I can see. It's just you'll have to cut here, you'll have to cut there.
Would there be an exponential increase in money for education in independent Scotland? You couldn't guarantee that.
Well, Tessa said, what's the tax rate going to be? Margaret couldn't tell you the tax rate is going to be in 5 years in the UK. These are decisions made by elected governments and budgets the way they are in countries across the world. The benefit of independence, in terms of the gentleman's question, is instead of the situation just now where we pay our taxes, all of that goes to the London Treasury and they give us a block grant back. We keep those taxes here and we make the decisions for ourselves about how we allocate that money.
The woman with the check jacket on, yes.
Surely it's like your coin, Kirsty. There's two sides to it. Can Scotland afford independence? And can Scotland afford to stay under Westminster?
There's a great statistic I heard the other day.
Margaret Kern has been for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been trying to get in because I would challenge some of the facts and figures. I imagine it must be really frustrating if you're not terribly involved in politics to hear two politicians and people always saying this figure's right and that figure's right, and I appreciate that. But it's absolute fact that more is spent in public expenditure in Scotland, £1,200 more in public expenditure in Scotland than it is in the rest of the United Kingdom.
Let's turn now to how an independent Scotland would actually operate, what it would look and feel like. Let's start with the currency. What would the change in your pocket be? Alex Salmond wants to stick with the pound and create a sterling zone. But wouldn't that be the Treasury's call? The Chancellor has already said he's worried about being tied to an economy so dependent on oil and financial services without retaining some degree of national control. So would Scotland have to create a new currency, the Pibroch perhaps, or join the euro? But that gets us to the thorny issue of European membership. As a new country, would Scotland have to apply for membership and then join the currency? A process that could take years. And would it be the same for NATO membership and the issue of defence? The SNP says it would build its own army of 15,000 soldiers, restore historic regiments and replace the intelligence agencies. Calls for £2.5 billion. And while we're on really intractable problems, what about Trident? The SNP wants a country without nuclear weapons, but the UK's nuclear deterrent is based at Faz Lane. To relocate would cost billions, so the Ministry of Defence is said to be looking at designating the area sovereign UK territory. And would the same have to happen to Balmoral? Alex Salmond says he wants the Queen to remain the head of state, a view shared by most of the Scottish public. But others in the independence campaign have mooted the idea of a republic. Nicola, right at the very beginning of this debate, in your opening pitch, you said, in fact, I think the words were, what you wanted was Scottish decisions about Scotland made in Scotland. But the way that you characterise the debate on independence means that what you want to have is you want to have the sterling, you want to have sterling, you want to be possibly part of different defence decisions, you want to keep the monarchy and so forth, you want financial institutions to still be the same. These kind of decisions are not going to be within your grasp. If you want to stick to sterling, you'll be in hock or in thrall to Treasury decisions in London.
Interest rates, for example, are not set by the Treasury, they're set independently by the Bank of England. We want to keep our pound. It's as much Scotland's pound as it is the pound of the rest of the UK. But independence gives us fiscal powers, it gives us the powers over tax and our welfare state to do the kind of things we've been talking about, get our economy growing, create jobs, create the wealth that then funds the public services we want.
Alex Massey, do you think it will be necessarily in Nicola Sturgeon's gift if Scotland was to vote yes, whether or not Scotland kept the pound?
I think that's hard to predict with any certainty, but what we can say is that everything Nicola has just said about the advantages of a sterling union, or what she and other senior members of the SNP said until very recently about membership of the euro, which of course would bring up many of the same problems as a sterling union within the UK. The SNP's currency position is one of convenience and political opportunism as much as it is a principle, which is absolutely fine, but it's designed to eliminate uncertainty. It's not because they actually have suddenly realised that sterling is the best answer for Scotland. It's their third currency position in 20 years.
Well, Ivan McKee, you want, as a businessman, to come back on that?
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, that's, again, that's about bending the truth. There's a number of parties that have changed position on currencies over the last few years, so to say it's only the SNP policy isn't accurate. And I mean, I'm not even SNP, but I think I needed to call you on that one.
I'm in Yes Scotland. Yes Scotland has Greens in it, as Scottish Socialists. So there's a discussion to be had about the currency future of Scotland.
But do you want your own currency, or do you want to stick with the pound?
Ultimately, I want my own currency, and I think the thing about a currency union is that I think it helps to stabilise the relationships between the two new countries. I think eventually Scotland should have its own currency. I mean, that's kind of the Green Party position, that's the SSP position. But I think the point is made about the currency at the moment being backed by Scottish oil. I think it's a compassionate act for Scotland to say, no, seriously, if we're going to manage this separation, let's manage it sensibly in a way that's supportive and that's having a discussion across the borders. But ultimately, I think, yeah, we should have a separate currency.
I mean, as a layperson, I'm astounded that you think it's acceptable that you have three different positions on a currency. You know, you can't ask someone to wipe out 300 years of history and change your position on the most fundamental issue that's going to keep our economy going, and that is currency.
You know, and also it's a year to your referendum. You're going to have to presumably come to a much sharper position.
And it seems to be going back in time, because one minute you're saying let's separate from Westminster, and undoubtedly your fiscal decisions will have to be led by the Westminster government. So as a layperson, what is the point of that? What is the point of that?
What we will be asking people to vote for next year is the currency union that I've described. You know, in the future, if a party was elected that wanted to change that, then they would have to have the democratic backing of the Scottish people. That's how democracies work.
Gentleman right in the back row with the blue shirt on. Yes, you had your hand up. Yes. Fire away. Fire away.
I think we're all sitting here waiting for a positive answer, and we're not actually getting a positive answer. We want a promise fulfilled. Nicola just said that Scotland is the richest country, or going to be the richest country. Can she tell me, are we going to still get student fees, free prescriptions and everything in years to come? Is this promise just until after the election?
Let's just get the promise.
If the SNP's in power, yes. Labour have said they want to end these things, but I will give you that commitment from the SNP.
Let me just nail you on that, because I don't think you're talking really about the next year. You're talking about the future in Scotland. Can you guarantee that if you had independence and that indeed you were in power, in a decade, you would have free tuition fees and free personal care? Because people are not making a short-term decision here, are they? They're making a long-term decision.
Of course, but politics is about priorities, and this government has demonstrated over the 6 years now that we've been in government that these kind of things are priorities. So we've allocated the money. Right. We've balanced the budget, incidentally, in the Scottish government over all these years when Westminster's been running a deficit, and we've delivered these policies. That's the commitment we've shown.
The other area where there is absolutely clear blue water is on the question of Trident. Now, what you're saying is vote yes to independence and there'll be no more Trident. Now, there's a lot of undecided people in the audience here. I wonder where you all stand on the issue of Trident. Never mind the cost of decommissioning and sending it somewhere else, if it could ever be sent anywhere else. Just a quick show of hands. Who supports getting rid of Trident? I mean, with all that it would entail, who supports keeping Trident? So I would say that's probably 2 to 1 against keeping it. But what's your position going to be here? Because you want to stay in NATO. The nationalists have said now they want to stay in NATO. It may not be as simple as that. NATO may not be open to you if there is a dispute over Trident.
Well, our position is that we want to be in NATO, but our opposition to nuclear weapons is non-negotiable. Can I just say, as a point of fact, there are 28 member states of NATO, 25 of them don't possess or host nuclear weapons. So that's actually the norm in NATO for countries to be nuclear free. We're talking here about finances. We spend tens of millions of pounds maintaining Trident. The proposal is to spend perhaps £100 billion in replacing Trident. That is simply obscene. And I think one of the benefits of independence will get rid of Trident.
Is it obscene to keep Trident?
Well, I want to get rid of Trident. The point is how you do it. I don't think necessarily, if you bear with me, I don't think necessarily the idea you just...
So the Shadow Scottish Secretary, hang on a minute, the Shadow Scottish Secretary of State wants to get rid of Trident, but it's not party policy.
No, I want to get rid of all nuclear weapons. Let me finish. Let me finish. The debate is how you do it. I don't think, morally, moving Trident 100 miles down the border actually solves the problem. I think you're much better engaging in international discussions